Joseph here with another video, and today I thought I'd share with you the top 10 albums from 1975 that I have in my collection. Of course, 1975 was 50 years ago, and I thought I'd share with you the top 10 in my collection. These might not be real popular albums out there, but they're some of my favorites. So let's get started. First of all, I have Tower of Power in the slot, and this is Tower of Power when they were still in their prime, I would say. They're still going today, even after 50 years plus. But this is when they still had a lot of the original band intact, which of course is Emilio Castillo, Steve Kupka, the Funky Doctor, Mick Gillette, the great Mick Gillette, the late great Mick Gillette on trumpet, Greg Adams, and David Garibaldi still on drums, and Frank Rocco Prestia bass. And on this particular album, the lead singer is Hubert Tubbs. Of course, they had done, I believe, 2 or 3 albums with Lenny Williams, who had their hits, So Very Hard to Go. And of course, Rick Stevens was before that, who used to sing You're Still a Young Man. But this is still Tower of Power in all its glory, with that great horn section and that funky rhythm section of Rocco and David Garibaldi. And I have to say, particularly, I really enjoyed the vocal stylings of Hubert Tubbs. I think he only made this album with them, but he was a very powerful singer, very funky, very gritty, very much a forceful type singer, but a lot of soul. So this is Tower of Power in the slot. Next up, switching things up, it's Horace Silver. Silver and Brass. And this is on the Blue Note label. This was when Horace was still on Blue Note. He did a series of albums. Here he's has his regular group, but he also has some arranged brass, and he did several of these types of albums towards the end of his Blue Note career. This was, of course, Silver and Brass. He did one, Silver and Woodwinds. I think he did Silver and Voices, but I think this is one of the better ones. And here the front line includes, I believe, who was his current group, with Tom Harrell on trumpet and Bob Berg on tenor. And he has studio guys, of course, the great Ron Carter, Bob Cranshaw laying down some funky electric bass, Fender bass, and Al Foster and Bernard Purdie on drums. This is a great front line, especially Tom Harrell. I'm a big Tom Harrell fan, and he blows some wonderful trumpet solos on here. And the compositions by Horace, of course, are all outstanding. And it's always great to hear Horace himself on piano. So Horace Silver, Silver and Brass. Next up, I have Warren Marsh, Jazz from the East Village. Warren Marsh is the back. And this is on a small independent label called Wave Records out of England. And here is the vinyl, black label. I'm a really big Warren Marsh fan. In fact, this is perhaps one of my favorite, we always say that's one of our favorites, but this really is. I play this one a lot. And it's Warren Marsh, the great tenor player. He comes out of the Lenny Tristano School. Of course, that was where he got a start, being a student of Lenny Tristano, and also making a lot of early recordings with Lee Konitz, and then, of course, continuing to record with Lee through the years. But what I really like about this album, it's in a very small setting. I believe it was recorded in an apartment building in 1960, but it was not released until 1975. Check out the great artwork. I'm not sure who the artist is on that, but it's really nice. It's like I say, it's a very intimate recording. It's just Warren on tenor, and Peter Ind is on bass. Actually, it's not Peter Ind, it's Eddie DeHaas. It was recorded by Peter Ind, who was a bass player out of the UK, who was also part of the Tristano School. But very intimate setting. In fact, the drums are almost non-existent. I believe they have somebody playing the phone book with brushes. So it's very, very light and airy, but it's a really great way to hear the beautiful lines of Warren Marsh. They're so unique and flowing and lyrical. Can't say enough about this album. Warren Marsh, Jazz from the East Village. Next out, something a little more common. This is the Allman Brothers, Win, Lose, or Draw. And of course, this is on the Capricorn label. And this album does not get a lot of love. Win, Lose, or Draw. It's a gatefold. Because this was one of their final albums with kind of the main band still intact. Dickie Betts and Greg Allman, they were kind of coming apart at the seams. And like I say, this one album does not get praised very much, but it's still a great album. I really enjoy titles like Can't Lose What You Never Had. You can really feel the pain and the grit and the soul of Greg on the vocals. That's a Muddy Waters tune. And also Win, Lose, or Draw, the title track. Really a lot of pain and sorrow in Greg's vocals, because that was a tough time in his life. Of course, Dwayne and Barry Oakley had passed in the years before, a couple years before. But even though this is probably not the greatest album by the Allman Brothers by any stretch, it's still a solid band at this time with, of course, the great leads of Dickie Betts. Next up, Michael Franks, The Art of Tea on Reprise label. And I'm a big Michael Franks fan. If you're not familiar with him, he was a vocalist, really popular in the early 70s. He has a light, airy voice, maybe somewhat akin to Mose Allison, but not quite that smoky. It's very light and airy. And his, I believe his first album on Warner Brothers, and outstanding backing on this. Basically, it's the Crusaders, which includes Wilton Felder, Joe Sample, Larry Carlton, and great funny tunes that are jazzy and a lot of fun, a lot of lyrical fun by Michael Franks, and includes tunes like Eggplant, Monkey See, Monkey Do, I Don't Know Why I'm So Happy I'm Sad, which is one of my favorites from there. Great piano solo by Joe Sample on that one. But this is Michael Franks, The Art of Tea. Next up, switching things up again, it's Asleep at the Wheel, Texas Gold. And this is on the Capitol label, the Orange Capitol. And Asleep at the Wheel is one of my favorite bands. I've seen them probably almost as much as the Grateful Dead, probably like 30, maybe about 30 times or so. And Ray Benson, guitar player, vocalist, was still going strong up until this past year where they've started to slow things down, and I think primarily stay in Texas, the home state. Of course, this included Ray Benson on vocals, Chris O'Connell also on vocals, Tony Garnier, who's a bass player who has played with Bob Dylan through the years. But if you're not familiar with Sleep at the Wheel, they're a Western swing type band out of Texas. I believe they're originally from West Virginia, but great band. Great. They play Bob Wills type music, but they really switch it up. They do some straight ahead country, some jazz type tunes. But some of my favorites here are The Letter that Johnny Walker Read. That's a fun one. And it's got Johnny Gimble on fiddle, the great Johnny Gimble. And Fat Boy Rag, that's an old Bob Wills tune. Let Me Go Home Whiskey, Rollin' Floyd. And really beautiful version of Nothing Takes the Place of You with Chris O'Connell on vocals. But this is Asleep at the Wheel, Texas Gold from 1975. Next up, Jefferson Starship, Red Octopus. And that's the band there. Of course, Grace Slick is still in the band there, and Marty Balin. And this is on their own label, the black label, Grunt. And for a long time in the 70s, I was initially a big Jefferson Starship fan, even before I got into the Airplane, because that was a little before my time. Although White Rabbit was perhaps the very first record I ever purchased. I bought the 45 single and I wore that thing out because I just love that song, White Rabbit, with Grace, of course, on vocal from 67. But this is the Starship, and this has really brought them back into the mainstream, being played a lot on the radio. And this included their hit Miracles with Marty Balin on vocals. This is a great comeback album that came out of the Jefferson Airplane. And I actually saw the Starship a couple of times through the years. And Grace was still belting out some great vocals. But I played the heck out of this in the 70s. I haven't played it quite so much lately, but it's always a great listen. Jefferson Starship, Red Octopus. Got a couple more before we finish up here. We'll go a little bit quicker. This is Grover Washington Jr., Mr. Magic on the Kadu label. And I believe this is Grover's second album. Includes the kind of the monster hit for him, which was Mr. Magic, which was covered by Amy Winehouse, among others. Of course, this was recorded by Rudy Van Gelder, and the typical Kadu CTI lineup of Bob James, Harvey Mason, Eric Gale, some great horn players. But you can't go wrong with any of Grover Washington Jr.'s early albums on Kadu. Grover Washington Jr., Mr. Magic. Now with a couple of jazz vocalists. This is the Tony Bennett, Bill Evans album, and this is such a wonderful album. Finds Bill and Tony just in a duo setting, just them two alone. And this is on the Fantasy label. There's Bill and Tony at the recording board with their manager Helen Keane. The Tony Bennett, Bill Evans album, some wonderful, wonderful songs here. Of course, they're all standards. Young and Foolish, The Touch of Your Lips, a great version of Some Other Time. They do Waltz for Debbie with lyrics, My Foolish Heart. And Bill Evans is the perfect accompanist. He probably, in my opinion, could have made a career out of being an accompanist. He does it with such taste and elegance and just all around a great accompanist for Tony. And his solos of here, just in a solo setting, are just outstanding. The Tony Bennett, Bill Evans album. And last but not least, an album probably most of you have never heard of, or an artist maybe you've never heard of, it's Irene Krall, Where Is Love? And this is on the Choice label. And this finds Irene Krall kind of in a similar setting as the Tony Bennett, Bill Evans, because this is just Irene, a vocalist. She was a jazz vocalist that had some fame, perhaps in, I don't know if it was the early 60s or late 50s, where she sang a great song called Better Than Anything. But here it's just a duo, just her and Alan Broadbent on piano. He's a wonderful pianist, arranger, originally from New Zealand. But like I say, very similar to the Bill Evans album as far as feel. But here it finds Irene singing I Like You, You're Nice, a great Blossom Dearie tune. Never Let Me Go, Spring Can Really Hang You Up the Most. Lucky to Be Me and Some Other Time, which is, of course, Bill Evans, made famous by Bill Evans. But really great, great album. Irene Krall, if you ever come across this and you like cool, understated vocals, female vocals, check out Irene Krall. So that'll do it for today. Hope you found some interest in this video. Maybe I turned you on to some artists that you were not real familiar with. But that's a look at 1975, the top 10 from my collection. Have a great day. Joseph out.